Stop scrubbing your cabinets with dish soap and wondering why the grease just moves around instead of coming off. I've watched people stand at their sink for 20 minutes, rag-soaked, elbow burning, and the wood still feels tacky when they're done. That's not a scrubbing problem, that's a chemistry problem. And most people are reaching for the wrong tool before they've even figured out what they're actually fighting. Here's what nobody tells you about kitchen cabinets. The grease you're wiping off the surface isn't the grease that's actually ruining your cabinets. That's the easy stuff. The real damage is happening about 1.5 feet above your stove, on the cabinet doors and the underside of your upper cabinets, in a layer so thin you can barely see it under regular light. You run your hand across it and it feels almost dry, almost normal. Then you look closer, maybe with a flashlight at a low angle, and you see it. A dull, slightly amber film sitting in the wood grain or baked into the paint texture. This builds up slow. Nobody notices day 1 or month 1, or honestly even year 1 in a lot of cases. It's cooking oil vapor, it's steam carrying fat particles, it's whatever splattered off the pan that never got wiped because it landed somewhere you weren't looking. Every time you fry something, boil something, sauté something, a little bit of that goes airborne and lands on every hard surface in a 10-foot radius. Cabinets closest to the stove take the worst of it, but I've cleaned kitchens where the grease had traveled clear across the room and settled on cabinets nowhere near the cooktop. The reason people don't catch it early is that grease doesn't look like grime. Dust looks dirty. Grease looks like nothing at first. It's clear or close to it, so your eye reads the cabinet as clean enough. By the time it's visibly darkening the finish or the door feels sticky when you open it, you're not dealing with a light film anymore. You're dealing with layers, sometimes years of layers, each one baking a little harder onto the last one because your kitchen stays warm every time you cook. And this is where the real trouble starts, because once grease sits long enough, it stops behaving like a surface stain and starts behaving like a coating. It bonds to itself. New grease sticks to old grease better than either one sticks to a rag. That's why a wipe down that used to take you 2 minutes now takes 20, and why the cabinet still looks a little off even after you've gone over it 3 times. Grease is a fat. Fats are non-polar, which is a fancy way of saying they don't mix with water. You've seen this in a pan of soup, where the oil sits on top no matter how much you stir. Water molecules are polar. They're attracted to other polar molecules, and grease just isn't one of them. That's the whole problem in a sentence. Plain water rolling across a greasy cabinet door isn't cleaning anything. It's sliding right over the top of it. Dish soap works because it's built with a molecule that has 2 different personalities. One end loves water, the other end loves grease. When you scrub with soapy water, the grease-loving end grabs onto the fat, the water-loving end stays hooked to the water, and the whole mess gets lifted and rinsed away together. That's basic emulsification, and it's the same principle that's been washing dishes since your grandmother's kitchen. On a plate, under hot water, with actual agitation, it works fast. On a vertical cabinet door, with room temperature water and a rag, it works a lot slower because you've lost the heat and you've lost the soaking time. Baking soda does something completely different. It's mildly abrasive, sure, but the real work is chemical. Baking soda is a base. Old, cooked-on grease has usually gone slightly acidic as it breaks down and oxidizes over time, especially once it's picked up smoke residue from the stove. When you put a base against that grime, you get a mild reaction that helps loosen the bond between the grease and the wood or laminate underneath. It's not dramatic, it's not going to fizz like a science project, but it does soften what's stuck. Here's the part I've seen trip people up for years. They treat this like it's one type of dirt, so they pick one product and expect it to handle everything. It doesn't work that way. Fresh grease, the kind from last week's cooking, responds fast to dish soap because it hasn't fully bonded yet. Old grease, the stuff that's been baking in kitchen heat for a year or more, has partially hardened. It's closer to a varnish than a liquid at that point. Soap alone struggles to break that down because there's not enough fat mobility left for the surfactant to grab onto. That's where the mild abrasion and the base chemistry of baking soda actually start pulling ahead. I learned this the hard way doing restaurant range lids early in my career, before I ever touched a residential cabinet job. Commercial kitchens build grease layers in months that a home kitchen takes years to produce. You learn fast that one product doesn't cover every stage of buildup, or you're there all night. Mistake 1. Scrubbing harder instead of soaking longer. This is the most common thing I see. Somebody's cabinet feels sticky, so they grab a scrub brush or a green scouring pad and go at it like they're trying to win a fight. Grease doesn't respond to pressure the way dirt does. You're not sanding it off, you're trying to dissolve the bond. Scrubbing dry or half-dry grease just moves it around. And on painted or finished cabinets, aggressive scrubbing can actually dull the finish or create fine scratches that grease then settles into even faster next time. I've seen kitchens where you can trace the scrub marks in certain light because someone went too hard, too dry, for too long. Mistake 2. Using hot water alone and calling it done. Heat helps loosen grease, that part's true, and it's why people think a hot rag is enough, but hot water without soap or a degreasing agent just re-liquefies the surface layer and smears it. You wipe, it looks better for about 10 minutes while the surface is still warm, and then it re-hardens as it cools, sometimes looking almost the same as before you started. It feels like progress in the moment, it isn't. Mistake 3. Mixing random cleaners together hoping for a stronger reaction. I've walked into kitchens where someone combined bleach-based cleaners with ammonia-based glass cleaner under the sink, trying to boost the power, not realizing they'd created a dangerous gas in an enclosed kitchen. Less extreme, but still a waste. People mix baking soda with vinegar, expecting some kind of super cleaner. The second you combine an acid and a base, they neutralize each other. You get fizzing, which looks like it's doing something, but by the time that reaction finishes, you're mostly left with water and a little sodium acetate. Any cleaning power either ingredient had on its own is mostly gone. Vinegar is good for some things in a kitchen. Boosting baking soda isn't one of them. There's a right way to run this comparison, and there's a right way to actually clean your cabinets once you know which one you're dealing with. I'll walk you through both, because the method changes depending on how bad the buildup is. Stage 1. Figure out what you're actually working with. Before you touch a single product, run your finger across the cabinet door in a few spots, near the stove, near the range hood, and somewhere farther away like a pantry door. If it feels slightly tacky but wipes clean with a plain damp rag, you're dealing with fresh, light grease. Dish soap alone will handle that fast. If it feels gummy, feels like it's got texture to it, or a damp rag barely makes a dent, you're dealing with old, bonded grease, and that's where you want the baking soda method or a combination approach. Stage 2. The dish soap method done right. Use hot water, as hot as you can comfortably work with, not lukewarm. Temperature matters here more than most people realize. Every 10 degrees of extra heat noticeably speeds up how fast the surfactant in the soap can penetrate the grease layer. Mix a few drops of a grease-cutting dish soap, the blue kind most people already have under the sink, into a bowl of that hot water. Don't just wet a rag under the tap and add soap directly to the cabinet. You want the soap properly diluted and active in the water first. Dip a microfiber cloth, not a sponge, into the solution and wring it out so it's damp, not dripping. Lay that damp cloth flat against the cabinet door and let it sit for about 60 to 90 seconds. This is the step almost everybody skips, and it's the one that actually makes the difference. You're not scrubbing yet, you're letting the heat and the soap start breaking the bond before you ever apply pressure. After that dwell time, wipe in straight lines, following the grain if it's wood, working from the top of the door down. Grease runs downward when it softens, so working top down keeps you from redepositing loosened grime onto a spot you already cleaned. Rinse your cloth frequently. A saturated cloth just redistributes grease instead of lifting it. Stage 4. The baking soda method for the tougher stuff. Make a paste. 3 parts baking soda to 1 part warm water, mixed until it's about the consistency of toothpaste, not runny. Apply that paste directly onto the greasy area with a soft cloth or an old toothbrush for grooves and corners, and this time let it sit longer, a full 5 minutes, sometimes 10 if the buildup is heavy.
This is the dwell time that actually does the chemical work. People rush this step constantly. They put the paste on and start scrubbing within 30 seconds, which defeats the purpose entirely. You're not scrubbing the grease off, you're giving the base time to soften what's bonded before you ever lift a cloth. Once it's had time to sit, wipe with a damp microfiber cloth using small circular rotions, then follow with a second pass of straight wipes to pull up any leftover residue. Rinse the cloth constantly during this part. Baking soda paste picks up grease fast, and a loaded cloth just smears it back onto the surface. Stage 4, for cabinets with real layered buildup. Sometimes one pass of either method isn't enough, especially on cabinets right above or beside a stove that hasn't been deep cleaned in years. In that case, I run both, in sequence. Dish soap and hot water first to lift the top, more recent layer of grease and cut through some of the surface film. Then baking soda paste on top of that, focused just on the areas that still feel tacky after the soap treatment, to break down what's older and more bonded underneath. Rinse thoroughly with a clean, barely damp cloth after each stage. Leftover soap film or baking soda residue will actually attract dust and grease faster than a clean cabinet does, which defeats the whole purpose of doing this in the first place. Dry your cabinets with a completely separate, dry microfiber cloth immediately after you finish, especially on wood. Air drying leaves a slight film from mineral content in tap water, and that film gives new grease something to grab onto faster than a bare, properly dried finish would. My grandfather used to call this closing the door behind you. You don't just clean something, you finish the job so it stays clean longer. A lot of people do 90% of the work right and skip that last dry wipe, and then wonder why the same spot goes tacky again in half the time it used to. One more thing worth knowing before you commit to a method: laminate cabinets and painted cabinets can handle baking soda paste just fine, as long as you're not using an abrasive pad with it, just a soft cloth. But on cabinets with a delicate matte or chalk-style painted finish, I'd lean toward the dish soap method first and only bring in baking soda as a backup, since repeated, mild abrasion on certain low-sheen paints can dull them faster than you'd expect. Test in a hidden spot, inside a door or the bottom corner of a cabinet, before you go over the whole kitchen with either method for the first time. There's also a step people always skip that matters more than the cleaning itself: ventilation while you're cooking going forward. It won't undo what's already built up, but running your range hood fan every single time you cook, not just when something's visibly smoking, cuts the amount of new grease landing on your cabinets by a wide margin. I've cleaned 2 kitchens on the same street, same age of house, same cabinets. One owner ran the fan religiously, the other basically never touched it. The difference in buildup after 5 years was not subtle. For maintenance, once your cabinets are actually clean, you don't need either method weekly. A quick wipe with a barely damp microfiber cloth after cooking sessions, maybe once every 2 weeks depending on how much you cook, keeps grease from ever reaching the bonded stage where you need the heavier baking soda treatment. Deep clean with the full method every 3 to 4 months if you cook often, twice a year if you don't cook much at all. So that's the real answer. Dish soap wins on fresh grease because it emulsifies fast. Baking soda wins on old bonded grease because it breaks the chemical bond heat alone can't touch. And the best results on a genuinely dirty kitchen usually come from running both in the right order, with the dwell time nobody wants to wait for. If you've got a cabinet that's fighting you no matter what you throw at it, drop a comment and tell me what you're dealing with. I read through these, and there's a good chance I've run into the exact same problem on a job somewhere. If you want the full breakdown on getting grease off range hoods and the wall behind your stove, where the buildup is usually even worse than the cabinets, that video's linked right after this one. And if you found this useful, subscribing helps more of these actually reach you when they go up.